Well, we've been waiting a while for this reading. And Henry was scheduled to read last December, but weather intervened. And it would have been difficult for Jane and I to get down here from our house with the snow that was on the ground, and Henry was in Monmouth. So we had to reschedule that, and we rescheduled it to tonight. And I've been looking forward to it a great deal. His poems have appeared in the Antioch Review, Carolina Quarterly, and various other periodicals. He's the author of 4 poetry collections, including Man Holding Eggs, which received the 2004 Oregon Book Award, Moist Meridian, which was a finalist for the award in 2011. His newest collection, Bunch of Animals, was published by Cloudbank in the spring of 2016. He's also the author of a memoir, Backseat with Fish, Adventures in Angling and Romance. Adventures in Angling and Romance, and is the editor of the Everyman's Anthologies, The Art of Angling, Poems About Fishing, and Fishing Stories. His commentary on new poetry appears regularly in the Harvard Review. He teaches at Western Oregon University. So would you join me in welcoming our poet for tonight? We're delighted to have him here, Henry Hughes. Henry?
Tom, thank you so much. This reading series, this tradition is just fantastic. So, Milwaukie with IE just totally rocks on. And this house, it's dark now, we're in the autumn season, but first time I read here, actually with Paul Ann Peterson, I think we had our first long talk here, and we were gazing out the window and saw a fish. And I was delighted. And you rightly said, I think it was a sucker, which sounds like, kind of a derogatory term. But, it's a beautiful fish. I mean, we name things, right? Shame on us. Speakers of language, right? Naked apes with our poetry. But I really appreciate being here, and thank you for coming. There's so much going on in the world. There's so much to listen to and read, and so I am truly grateful. And I just know there's a lot of friends out there, a lot of poets out there, and I want to start this reading with a tribute poem to the late Peter Sears. A lot of you knew him. He was a good friend of mine. And he was a mentor. He read a lot of my poetry that I wrote here in Oregon. And he contributed a poem to this anthology I edited, The Art of Angling, poems about fishing. And Peter was also, a poet who's like, well, I can do that. And he had a fishing poem. I later learned from Anita, his wife, Peter didn't know anything about fishing. But I reread the poem carefully this morning. And he got it. It's right. And I love angling. I love fishing. And Armin, you're a pro angler over there. We can test this out. But this is called night fishing. And it's really a lovely poem. The water is a glaze like loneliness at ease. I cast and close my eyes for the whir out across the water, the line striking the surface and sinking. I like waiting for it to settle on the bottom, then jig it up a little. I imagine the lure in the utter dark. I play it lightly. Fish rise, just shy of the surface. They play their glints off the moon on the water. I see, too, my own loneliness. It's not too big, and it breathes easily. Soon, it may pretend it's rain. Rain blurs the water. There's nothing wrong with rain. I take a deep breath and cast and cast. Night Fishing by Peter Sears. And I really, he gets it right, when you cast out there and you kind of imagine what the lure is doing. And that's something about fishing. There's a kind of, there's always the mystery, the darkness, and you kind of have to work through what is, what's happening down there. So he got it. Well, again, thanks. I'd like to start with some poems from my newest book, Bunch of Animals. I like I'm sure many of you love animals. We're animals, so what's not to love? But I like to choose animals that maybe don't get as much attention. And I'm interested too, of course, like all of us as poets and thinkers and writers, different dimensions to an animal's character. So this is called Like Eels. And I'm interested in eels. Eels are kind of in crisis. The American eel is, as you know, their populations probably are declining, and they have an extraordinary life. But the eel itself, as a kid, I grew up on the East Coast in New York, Long Island, and we caught eels all the time. And I remember just feeling them, and they have this wild, mucus, skin, and they're slick and they twist. I mean, they really are what we think they should be. They're wild and twisting, and they will bite you too. But they're also delicious. I mean, we ate eels, we ate eels. We fried them, we smoked them. Like eels in lotioned ooze and mossy caves, tasting, touching, swallowing what hauls them to the light, cream-bellied and turned to bite, then skinned, slit, and spun, firm and oily, over the grill's loom. Brushed sweet and salty for us to eat, discuss if we must, but mostly trust, making sense or love that's real before we slip away again like eels. There's something about the motion and the slickness of an eel that reminded me of our own ephemerality. So thanks for the broadsheet. This is another great tradition. I haven't seen it yet, but there it is. It's a lovely old poetic tradition. And is it Eccentric Sand Dollar? Is that the poem itself? Okay, thanks, Carlos. And Carlos helps me out. He keeps me kind of alert. Thanks, Carlos. He's with it. So, again, thinking about other dimensions to an animal's character. I was actually at a beach house, a little hungover, and you just kind of I didn't bring any books foolishly. I don't know what I was thinking. I reached on their bookshelf. There was a field guide to the Oregon coast, and I learned about this eccentric sand dollar. That's the common name. So it's an echinoderm. It's sand dollars. They're urchins, but we find them right in their skeletal state. And they're kind of people don't even know, what the heck is a sand dollar? What is this thing? Is it a lion? Is it a creature? Well, yes, it's the skeleton. It's the remains of this creature. And the word itself, it's interesting. The Latin for the species is Dendraster eccentricus. Because, right, so if you look at a sand dollar, the markings are not centered. So it's not centric, right? It's eccentric. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, you lovers of words out there, I know you are. So that's what an eccentric is. You're not centered, or you're not symmetric, or you're not lined up. So I love this idea. If you're poor and weird, the failed test of a purple urchin, washed up, stinking, flitting flies, don't expect much respect. But with money or a brand, craft coin kitsch, from a mermaid's purse, then you're eccentric, $1 in the sand. In the seaside shop, on the windowsill, bleached clean for the tourists, faintly impressed with a star or flower from an earlier, richer, better life. And an evolutionary biologist told me that the star you see on the sand dollar is actually kind of it's its history, it's its genetic history. They are related to starfish, and so there's a connection. It's actually right. So isn't that fascinating? So I'm not a scientist, but why not love this stuff and learn what you can, and bring it to poems. It's such a pleasure. That's probably the best thing about being a poet. You can just write about any crazy shit you want. Because they'll say, well, he got it. Well, he's not a scientist. They'll say, if you got a little bit wrong, it's okay, right? You got a starfish on here. That's a beautiful starfish pendant.
Oh, thank you.
Is it a starfish or just a star?
It's a starfish.
Okay, it's beautiful. Thank you for wearing that tonight. I really appreciate that. Well, there are cuddly animals that we love, don't we? And we have a rabbit that we love. We have a couple rabbits, and my wife, who's given to kind of work-related anxieties, I mean, it's like, she just worries about things, and I try to comfort her, but the rabbit really works. She picks up the rabbit. And you know this, right? You pet your cat, you love your dog. It makes a big difference, doesn't it? It's true, right? And so I was struck by this. She would pick up the rabbit, and if you turn a rabbit over, it's one of these kind of like silly stories, but this one is true. You turn a rabbit over, it'll kind of just like go to sleep in your arms. I'm not an expert in rabbits. Maybe there's some rabbit experts here, but the rabbit will really relax and close its eyes. And rabbits are nervous animals, you see. I mean, they're prey. I mean, everybody wants to eat a rabbit, right? But they can really mellow out with the right touch. This is called rabbit way. Before work, Chloe lifts her silver gray rabbit from his hutch, his little heart fast in her arms, his ears perked to every garden rustle, wide-eyed to wing shadow, sniff twitching the breeze and bloom of her blouse, his long furry feet itching for purchase and push. Chloe cradles him to his back, the warm cosset of her plush chest, ears stroked into smooth canoes turned over in the sand after a river of worry. Car doors barking, a raccoon clawing up the cage. "Oh, sweet bunny," she says softly, easing his pulse. Feet trackless in air, his eyes slowly, slowly closing until there's not a sound, scent, or shape of what we call fear. As she saves him day after day in her own way, a rabbit way, hugged close in the warm burrow of a moment. Thanks. Mothers and children too. I came to parenthood rather late. I've been with my wife 10 years, and she had 2 children. They were 5 and 7 when I met them, and I've been a stepdad and helped raise them. But I've also observed things a little bit from a distance, not being their biological father. And this is just a scene I observed when a son is growing up, and there's this kind of power emerging, and it's connected to bicycles and machines and things. And I noted something too about Chloe was just sunbathing that she likes to do in the backyard. Mother and son. In the backyard, behind grimy spokes of his upturned bicycle, he sees her robed, unfolding a lawn chair. "Everything okay?" she asks. "Chains off," he says, eyeing greasy links, hands browner and bigger every day. She eases her thickening hips onto plastic beside the buzzing time and closes her eyes. He sets the chain and rides through the gate. "Stay close," she calls, to where he feels the fast turn of himself. "Stay close," she calls, to where he feels the fast turn of himself. That's a Clem Stark trick, too. You read those last few lines twice. Why not? You got to emulate the good poets around you. Absolutely. It's great to have so many poets in this room. So I find reading stimulating. You go home and you want to write a poem the next morning. You get, because you're kind of like, all right, I want to be a poet again. Do you feel? Sometimes do you get bummed out, Carlos, about being a poet ever? Do you feel kind of? See, you're amazing. I get bummed out sometimes. Okay. Because I'm thinking, then I hear a poet, I'm like, all right, I'm kind of excited about poetry again. I don't know, just hearing it, knowing it's alive. It's been a little hard times for some of us, I think, as poets. I don't know. It's been maybe a little rough season, but we can pull together and pull this off. Here's another poem about parenting and animals. Do you know what earwigs are? Yeah. Crazy creatures, aren't they? They got those little pinchers on their abdomen. So did you ever hear a story? You ever know like a myth about earwigs?
No. My brother was sleeping overnight in the backyard with some friends, and an earwig actually did crawl into his ear. He said it was the worst pain he'd ever
Wow. So he's living testimony that they will do that. Did it enter his brain?
No.
Okay.
He managed to shake it out.
Because have you heard the story about they lay eggs in your brain? I mean, it's not true, but it's one of those like crazy myths, you know. But that's the story that we heard as kids. So I mean, I'm playing on that. Earwigs can lay eggs in your brain. Ridiculous myth, right? But something itched under my cap, laddered against the dormer, wet paintbrush in hand, when a daubed white earwig wriggled out from a crack. Funny at first, shaking its bright annoyance, then sad in its enamel dying. Outside the bedroom where my teenage son slept off a Facebook hangover. Party pictures of his beer-soaked girlfriend between couch cushions and the friend who drove her home. Unlike most insects, earwigs care for their young. I learned this from Wikipedia at lunch. Then climb back up beside his window with a little sympathy and a little disgust, the long wet strokes covering nicely. True story. Painting the house, thinking about what it might possibly mean. So as we all should do. You know, one of the great birds around here, I love this river. It's so nice to be in Milwaukie, a river town. And the osprey, you know, of course, is one of our great birds around here. And again, playing on myth, too. You know, the osprey, you know, how do you write another bald eagle poem? How do you write another osprey poem? You know, what is a seahawk? What does it mean? What did the ancients think it means? I mentioned Pliny here, you know, one of the early naturalists. And so I'm kind of working with my osprey story. But one thing that fascinated me about the osprey, and this is true, this is ornithologically accurate, they will occasionally overcommit to a big fish, like a huge salmon or a carp, bigger than they can handle. And there are accounts of them drowning, believe it or not. Mostly they just get really, you know, they get pulled under and pull out. But because, you know, their talons get in there, it's hard to retract. So again, we observe nature, don't we? And we looked for meaning, not maybe as a biologist, but I don't know, as a person. So I'm trying to think, what does this mean? What does this mean? Osprey. Bandit eyes cut the glare to hover, plunge, hook and hold, torpedo style, the out-dazzled trout. Pliny called you ossifraga, bone breaker, but it's flesh you rip. From the twistening glist, high whistle, crook in the wing, your crazy nest topping a tower. Who would you call if your mate, fast to a big salmon, flapped and splashed, pulled under the waves? Osprey drowns, the birders blog. It happens more than you think. Moderation and restraint evolving so slowly in all of us. I can identify with the osprey. I'm here to tell the tale, but there were a couple close calls. Overdoing it. Well, having some fun. And you know, I mean, a lot of you are very experienced readers too, and you plan a set, right? You plan a set. But I love the hearing the audience. I love kind of feeling my audience too, and knowing what's out there. So I want to move to a poem that I was so honored to have appear in Hubbub. Lisa just gave me the new issue. Thank you very much, Lisa Steinman, a great poet and editor. And so this is about, again, right here, Oregon City shad. I love Oregon City. I love Milwaukie. I do a lot of fishing in this area. I drive up from Monmouth, launch my boat. And in the spring, there's a shad run. Are you familiar with the shad? It's an interesting fish. It's an anadromous fish, comes in from the ocean in great numbers. Not really a fish that people eat in Oregon, although back east they do. People in the Delaware, you know, there's a John McPhee wrote a very famous book, Founding Fish, about the American shad and recipes and all of that. but we're spoiled on steelhead and salmon. So we mostly use them for crab bait. I think that's really, but sturgeon feed on the shad that dies. Many die, many do return to the ocean. It's a fascinating run of fish that comes up every spring. So I was thinking about the fish again in terms of values. What does this mean? All these fish, all these silver fish coming in. To be current in all things, deep-cheeked, toothless, nose to tail, bright up the river's dark channels and sandy shallows, osprey-clawed, hook-pulled, silver and green-backed through the ceiling's harsh economy, or swimming on, long-shadowed, shoulder-spotted under the freeway and paper mill canyon, foam roaring white, eggs and milt, fin-flopped, dying, an oily yellow tumble, sturgeon sucked or rot-washed away, or like the rest of us, spent but still spending, back to the sea, while the tiny new millions tremble in every uncertain river. And I was thinking about the uncertainty of the economy at the time. I wrote this kind of shortly after the crash, but they come back every year so far. Maybe because they're not targeted, they're not so valuable. But look for the shad. Think of the shad next May here in Milwaukie. Okay, let me try something else. How you guys doing? All right out there? Yeah. It's great. Something from my first book, Men Holding Eggs. You ever do bibliodivination? Any of you ministers or have parents that were ministers? Do you know that term? Yeah, it was a term. You know that term?
Oh, yeah, we just
That's right.
open the Bible.
Yeah, that's right.
And
They'd open the Bible on Tuesday
Yeah.
to prepare for your sermon on Sunday. You go like this. And you go, oh, no. Definitely not. So there is a little bit of, God and man must work together. No, definitely not that one. So this is absolutely a ridiculous form of choosing a poem, but I just thought I would bring it up anyway. Okay. Calling down the geese. A lot of us deal with family and the good and bad in family. And I think really writing helps kind of reconcile a lot of stuff. So I had an uncle. A lot of us have family members. He was such a brilliant guy in many ways. He was an old goose hunter, an old Long Island goose hunter. He made his own decoys, made his own calls. And I really admired him. As a young boy, my family didn't hunt or fish. He was the sportsman. He had the boat. I love this guy, but I learned later he was a really violent guy. He had a lot of issues, and he had a lot of domestic violence and all kinds of problems. And toward the end of his life, he went blind. And actually, those symptoms were coming up even when I knew him, and we would go hunting together, calling down the geese. He's calling down the geese, my uncle, low in the gray hull, his face billows with blowing through a wooden throat, a note, all December, all bird. He's blind, once a savage, beating his wife on Christmas. I know that, watching him listen downwind. He smiles, suddenly, holding my arm to be still. Be still. I forgive. I love this moment. He's calling down the geese, the gander's ear, its memory, breath drawn across the bony reeds. So we use poetry, don't we? Just to get through things. Here's a poem about gar. We don't have gar in Oregon. You know the gar fish? It's right, long-toothed fish. And I'm interested in fishing and nature on many levels, but as a younger man too, I was interested in killing these fish. And now I do still eat fish, but I look back with some remorse perhaps, or wondering about the complication. This takes place in Indiana, where I went to graduate school, and I was reading a lot of Melville to do my dissertation. No, it's true. And there's an Ahabian kind of notion of nature and power and force and Gar, unguarded, low inside Indiana's 2 o'clock heat, strikes the plastic lure and lets go, not believing the world has turned so hard. It has. And there are no limits to art. So hand me that arrow and take the paddle, there toward the teeth, the shad-long red swallow. But seeing it eat again and again for its own ancient self makes my heart so terribly full of Gar. The underworld insatiability of it all. Bow drawn behind the steel point, its simple head won't know from lightning as we devolve in the eveless garden without hunger or knowledge. Who needs to know the past when we can see the Gar and kill it? And maybe that's, a confession and mission, and maybe that's an observation about so much of what we do. Who needs to know the past? We can destroy things. If you know the past, it makes it more complicated, doesn't it? Or if you know something, yeah. At readings too, sometimes you have thoughts, don't you? And you wish you could write them down, but they happen right up here. I don't know. What do? What happens? What happens like in a rock concert when someone is singing and they have like a big thought? You got to go on, right? It's like, I don't know. There's like, or speech, a big speech. I don't know. Currently, I don't see too many speeches with big thoughts, so maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's not an issue any longer. Let me read one more poem because we want to have some. I don't know when you started, Tom. I lost track of time, but
You got plenty of time.
all right, because I like question and answer too, and I could. All right, I read a couple more poems, but I like talking to you, and I want to hear what you're thinking, or if you're outraged, or you're happy, or you have a question. I'm really interested. I love talking to the audience. It's a very important part of these readings. So, this was my second book, Moist Meridian, and it's a real Oregon book. I wrote all the poems here in Oregon, and because we're in the Moist Meridian, aren't we? I think. And met so many of you here when I was working on this book. It was very satisfying. This is a poem called Campfire Girls. As you know, I love mythology like many of you, and Circe lived on the island of, is it Achaia? And she was surrounded, of course, by people she had turned into animals. You know Circe. Yeah. Campfire Girls are the Girl Scouts. That's the first level, right? I was a Cub Scout and a Weeblo. Crazy. Where does that word come from? Weeblo. I don't know. I have no idea.
It stands for We Belong.
Okay, thank you very much. You actually have edified me. I'm appalled by my lack of research tenacity. We belong. We blow.
We belong.
So are you a scout, mistress?
I was, and the boys were scouts. And
We be loyal scouts.
oh yeah, we be loyal. That's what,
Scouts.
Okay. So you're involved in scouting?
I was.
Okay. Yeah. And I was a Boy Scout too, but then I dropped out. But I like scouting.
yeah. Well, that's in between Cub Scouts and
That's right.
Scouts.
That's right. And Campfire Girls, that's the first level?
No, that's
Separate organization. Okay. Wow, so this is like miscegenation here. I didn't even realize how interesting this is. This is exciting. All right, well this is my memory of it all. I don't know. Maybe I was sniffing glue at that time and starting to experiment with the liquor cabinet. In any case, I was jealous of the girls, kind in their fire. No rock fights, no wood hunts in the monster dark, Weeblos pulling down my pants to see what hadn't happened. The girls talked of horses and love, I thought, until I canoed their salty pond at Camp Circe, spied the hand-sewn sun flag fluttering above the swept and curtained cave, smelled simmering soups so savory I would soon learn, animals could be turned into men. I did learn that. Aha. It can go the other direction, thank goodness. Thank goodness. I'm doing bibliodivination. I'm kind of enjoying it. So this is called Steelhead Almost. Some of you may have heard I enjoy reading this because I like fishing. And thank you, Tom, for depicting me as an angler. I got several emails from people saying that was a very... Because, normally a poet, I don't know, do you have yourself like posing in like your golf outfit or your jogging suit? But you asked for photos, and I sent it because it was the newest photo. I think it should be real, too. Like, I don't want to send you a photo of when I'm like 21. I'd love to, but I got to be honest, So that was the most recent author photo, but I got a lot of response. I go, so you're a fisherman, like you think the whole world is fishing. And of course, we all have our passions, our interests, whether it's gardening, right? Or you've got hobbies, you're doing things, building things, traveling. But I do love fishing, and steelhead is like the fish of this region. It's the most coveted fish. They're very difficult to catch. Last year, some of you are anglers here, it was the worst return of summer steelhead we've had in a long time. And but even when conditions are good and you're fishing a river like the Siletz, is where this takes place, it's hard. If you get one or two, strikes, you might be having a good day. And this is a case too where there's a little bit of pressure from a loved one, perhaps, to bring home a fish. Because if you catch a fin clip steelhead, perfectly legal, bring it home, eat it. They're delicious. I love steelhead. Put it on the grill. So I got a little pressure. And it's nice to kind of, I still like, maybe I'm play acting, the primitive man, the paleo warrior. I bring home some meat, it's crazy, right? I'm admitting it. I'm confessing to you. But I get off on this a little bit, all right? I feel like, all right, we got one today. I'm like, really? It's great. All right, get it cleaned up. All right, so this didn't happen, though, this day. My friend and I. Too dark to retie. They walk fishless over the bridge, break down rods and unboot for the dry drive home. Oh, well, one man says, that's fishing. The other doesn't want to talk. There's a barbecue tomorrow. If you catch something, she said, that'd be wonderful. Following headlights, he feels again that strike behind the stone. Cherry blushed chrome, leap silver and dive, then gone. Canyon pouring river, swallows spading air. The trees shrug as if nothing happened. In a hole deeper than sleep, the steelhead undulates fragrance and flow, nudging forward 3,000 orangey eggs in her bright sleeve. Got to make peace with the fish. Okay. You want to hear the whale poem? Yeah. Hey, thanks. Wow. I feel like a rock star. Thanks a lot. Eating whale? You like that poem? Is that what you're thinking of? Wow, okay, I'll read that. So I lived in Japan for a while, and that's my first book. And I tried whale. You're probably thinking, that's not very thoughtful. I'm not in favor of whaling anymore, but there were still whale available in the supermarket when I lived in Japan in the 90s, and I bought it and tried it. Whale, there, right in the supermarket. So I make a soup. To taste crime is to believe in yourself. I close my eyes like God, thinking feet gone to flukes, my fabulous tail, seagrass, turtles, steely blue fish, all this, and the fatty sound between my teeth, crackling like a billion bubbles. It's not very good. I don't know why anyone would want to eat this stuff. I mean, it's not like, wow, whale. Like caviar, maybe. I like sturgeon eggs, but at least there's something. I'm not in favor of killing sturgeon. I'm just saying, at least I got the whale. They say tradition, whatever. I don't buy it. Any case. All right. Let me end with one short poem, then we can talk a little bit. How's that sound, Tom? We good?
Sure.
How you feeling?
Sure. Great.
Tom, thanks so much for this. And this crowd is terrific. It's good to see so many friendly faces out there. Bill and David and Paul Ann and David and Armin, and I could just go around, and Carlos and Stephen Constance. Thank you. I mean, so many poets here too. Ken's good to see you. Ken was going to California, but he got burnt out by the fires. And our hearts are with so many people. You know, it's we know about fires in Oregon, but man, it's just bad. You know, I have a poem about fire, but it has nothing to do with forest fires. But maybe we need to grab images of fire and consumption to try to work through it too. This is a book I did with Paul Gentry, the artist. It's a book, and I have a bunch. If you want one, I'll give it to you for a discount. He took photographs, and I wrote poems to the photos. And it was a really good experience. It was, I don't know if you've worked with, you can call it ekphraxis, or you can just call it collaborative work, where you work with a visual artist and do something. But we did it. He had a photo of a high fire kiln, and you know, extremely hot for doing a particular. Some of you are ceramicists, some of you potters here, you know about high firing. You know, we build this kiln like for a couple days, right, and stoke it. I mean, you just drop a piece of wood in there and it explodes. It's like several thousand degrees. It's crazy. It's interesting just for that. You know, I mean, it's just intense heat, like volcanic heat, high fire. Dropping a cone 10, 2,300 degrees and rising, ash melts, kindling explodes, logs flower like matches. After 4 sweat-stoking days, 5 cords of wood, 6 foil-wrapped chickens, and 7 cases of mind-fusing homebrew beer, I take the dragon by the head and dive right through the kiln door. Hair and clothes ablaze, thrashing pots and plates in the wild draft of my instant steamy burning. Don't tell the folks that own the hill. Don't tell my students or my kids that I think about such things. My wife, though, she'll understand. Stoneware is high fire, waterproof, durable, oven safe. Something to hold the onion-glazed Sunday roast, honoring what we've made before it's burned up. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Thank you. You guys are great. Oh, thanks. Such an honor. If we have time, I'd be happy to entertain questions or comments. You don't need to court me. You may speak and tell me what you're thinking. I'm very curious. Yes, please.
This just occurred to me when you were talking about your paleo self.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, it's very interesting about cave art in France and Spain.
Sure.
And the dates keep getting pushed back farther and farther. And, of course, it's everlastingly fascinating because of that relationship of the wild animal and
Right.
power, and then where are we in that?
Right.
There's an interesting theory that because these are all in really inaccessible places and nobody ever lived in those places,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, instead of just saying, well, it's sort of a shamanistic activity, to say that it's possible because of cultures that still do rock art today, that in a way, by painting the animal, you could help achieve its survival.
Mm-hmm.
So, like playing the role of co-creator.
Yeah, interesting.
And you were mentioning, you know, we're all so worried about species in jeopardy and so on.
That's right.
So by being a poet and writing about animals,
Right.
perhaps, what do you think?
I love that. I love that comment. And we know not only were there many animals, but many fish were painted as well. Fishing and hunting they had, again, a totemic kind of quality, and animals were venerated. Because it's so exciting to see wild animals close and to catch them. It really is. And I do agree that we must write about animals. And this might be controversial, although I have mixed feelings. I still think in some ways, if they're really well handled, I think zoos can be useful. Now go ahead, feel free to contradict me, because I know as a child seeing a real elephant in a good situation got me so excited about elephants. And I went to the library and got books out. in a way that seeing Channel 13 in New York, which was brilliant, Mutual of Omaha, all the nature programs, didn't do it for me. I can't go to India or Africa and see an elephant, but I could see them at the zoo. So the power of apprehension, but also as artists, capturing them, talking about them, writing about them, making them exciting. So I just think that, yeah, we need to be in touch with them as any chance we get, any opportunity. I'd love comments on that. I love that you mentioned the Lascaux caves. Are those some of the famous ones, the first ones? Am I saying that right?
There's also,
Lascaux, thank you.
yeah, there are others too.
Yeah. And, there's just, like these haunting, stunning images of animals. Early stuff. Their first art. And that was art history. That was our first chapter, I think. We did the cave paintings. Good. Yes, Tom.
Well, you talked about working, and how do you work? And as far as writing, and a comment I'll add to that, as I was thinking, I saw Neil Young once on Charlie Road.
Love Neil Young.
Yeah, me too. And he claimed that you had to write, if you got an idea, you had to write it down right then.
Yeah.
And he even said, if I got an idea right now,
Right.
live on your show, I'd have to go and write
That's
it
so
down.
great.
He didn't do that. He might have.
A lot of artists have said that.
Yeah.
I think, right? That's a common observation. And I think if you can do it, do it. Why not? If you're really dedicated, I think a lot of people do. Depends on how dedicated you are. Are you really that dedicated? You're going to get out of the shower and dry off enough to get on that notepad? Most people won't. Be like, I'll remember it later. But I think if you're really dedicated, you should. Because I think the memory just, will fail you. So I used to be better at that. I am getting a little bit lazy. That's an admission. But I shouldn't be. Maybe I can revive myself. You think I can? With special herbs? With herbs? And exercise? More exercise. Because, no, I wanted to be I was telling Armin, we had a nice walk. We had a drink. And I said, when I was younger, I wanted to be like, a famous poet. I did. I'll be honest. Now I'm like, I just want to be a writer and be a good person. And I still care. But some of that ardor has transformed. I don't want to say it's faded. But yes, we should write things down. They just go otherwise, don't they? I don't know. Comments on that, Carlos? What do you think?
Well, I work at the sort of colossal ego that said whatever I see and feel is in there, and I can take it out at any time.
Okay, so it's in there.
As I get a little bit older,
Yeah.
it's a little harder to find. It's
Yeah.
very factors.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to weigh in on that? That's interesting. Pauline, do you write things down when you get an idea?
Not frequently.
Did you used to more?
No.
Okay, I'm just interesting. We work differently. No, we work differently.
It makes me angry at myself because in 5 minutes later, because at the time I think, oh, I've got that.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes
Yeah.
later, I think, okay, what was that? And what I remember, I know is not as good as.
Okay. Because like Carlos was saying, the core stuff is in there. I exist. I think. I take in. I'm just gonna, in the morning, I'm gonna go down and get in there and or the evening, whenever you write, I'm gonna get it out. But I know with songwriters, there's the melody thing, right? McCartney has talked about that, and many writers, Dylan, you got to catch that melody. And journalists, I got an idea. If you're writing a thesis-oriented book, I got an idea. Boom. Maybe poets, we romanticize that it's just drawing up the human condition. That's interesting. I'm not sure. Anyone else want to comment on that? Armin, you have a comment on that?
I would just like to say I love hearing this because I worry that poetry for some reason is romanticized, like you're saying, that so much of it is based on inspiration and some lightning moment versus the drilling and repetition of it. And we don't put that towards fishing and casting.
Okay.
Like how many times you practice that bait caster
Right.
to see if you can get it right.
Exactly.
And you will eventually get it from the practice of it versus saying like, oh, well, I got it right once and that was the one chance I had to get it right.
Sure.
And I don't know other art forms that require us to
Mhm.
to be so passive.
Mhm.
Like we think here, like, oh, well, the moment came and then it was gone.
Mm.
Versus saying you could drill it down like any practice you can
Yeah.
drill down.
Yeah, interesting. I do think we should write every day if we can. That part, whether we're catching ideas or not, but the practice, the training of the writing is something like any athlete or anyone, you should just do it every day. But great, thank you. Great question, great comment. Other comments, questions, reflections? Yeah.
Could I just ask? A lot of your poetry seems, as you were sharing with us, really inspired by specific moments, memories that you had, things you've experienced. What do you think it takes to go from like a vignette to a poem? What is the difference there between writing down a memory versus creating a poem?
Boy, yeah, that maybe that's what art is all about, right? Because I love the vignettes, I love the stories. And that's the kind of poetry I wanted to write for a long time. And I liked songs that were like that too. I liked Grateful Dead songs that were little cool stories. Friend to the Devil, Uncle John's Band, whatever. Those, I mean, Neil Young, same thing. So, like as writers, when you push that though beyond story into language, what's the exact right word, and what kind of little magical transformation can take place? So it's not just a little folktale, although folktales are very cool. It's that's my, pushing it like some weird, wonderful thing happened here when I'm retelling it, when I'm distilling it, that makes it something more. But, and that's my, interpretation of how poetry is a little different from a collection of tales. But I don't know, I might be off on that. Lisa, do you want to comment on that? I know,
But there's multiple kinds of poetry, so.
Exactly.
Seems to me, one person might be more interested in, sure, the sound and the seductions of sound, the physicality of the poem. Others, the narrative.
Right.
And yet again, others wanting to push beyond, to question whether your first sense of what a vignette or a picture or an image seems to me, and question yourself and sort of look at things from other sides, so that uncertainty becomes some kind of center.
Yes, that's
all
lovely.
legitimate ways to
But I think
Mhm.
in
Thank
the
you.
selection of poems you read tonight, you mentioned values, a lot of them. What is the value of the animal
Right.
to us, or the intrinsic value of the animal? And I think that opens the door for the animal in the poem to be a metaphor for something, and we can kind of fill in the other half of the metaphor ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. And Peter Sears, I want to keep his spirit with us tonight. He warned me against being too judgmental, and he really warned me against being righteous about anything, which is great advice. But because a lot of times he would stand back and just say, well, give the complexity and let the language do its thing with it. I want to get in there and maybe sometimes make more of a pronouncement. Even if then I've learned to undercut my pronouncement, But because it's kind of like I want my poem to be kind of me too. But so I'm very willing to admit the mystery and like this. What is the value of this creature to me, and through myth and through whatever its biological role. But on the other hand, like what is it? What do I know? And so that's part of like pushing the story way beyond. And when you read something like, oh, that's cool, but it's kind of flat. That's it. That's all you get from it, one level. I definitely want, I want more. I want to try to always get something more going on. Yes, please.
Well, I was just thinking about when I was a girl, my father was a rancher. But the thing that I remember about him was he had so much respect for the animals, and he took such good care of them. He didn't just, who cares, whatever. He always took care of them. And if we had hurt one of the animals, somebody, it's just livestock.
I see.
Not to him.
Good.
We would have been in so much trouble.
Right.
And I was watching this special on television. It was from Japan, and it was about Kobe beef, and it showed people like just taking such beautiful care of these animals.
Interesting.
And somebody could say, that's livestock.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between having respect and taking care of the animal
Right.
that you're going to be eating, and just like factory
Sure.
farms and stuff.
I love to hear that, exactly. I,
And when I hear about factory farms,
Right.
and you'll hear vegetarians really superior, me better,
Right.
talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
And bringing that type of thing
Yeah.
up. But those type of practices that are allowed,
Mm-hmm.
if you had even told my father that that was gonna happen, I mean, he would have just gone nuclear.
Yeah. Well, I admire your father for being so conscientious about the animals that he was raising. I'd like to live like that. I'd like to buy my food from people that raise animals in that way. I'd like to catch my own fish. And I think the best anglers and the best farmers or ranchers they do care about animals. Others may say, well, you're fooling yourself. You're still killing them. I understand that argument too, but it's nice to hear that. And that's a value worth extolling, and discussing. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I'm changing the subject slightly, but
Please do.
I'm curious. It seems like in this country a lot of poets teach.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't always true, and still isn't true in some other cultures. What do you make of that? Is that hard to do, or I mean, you teach as well, right?
I do, and sometimes I fantasize about being like a commercial fisherman or a butcher, or seriously, a carpenter who's like this poet. Because I'm not in the academy, I'm outside of it, and I work with my hands. And I know I fantasize about being that person. I couldn't. I knew that my calling was reading and writing and teaching, and that was how I would make the best living possible for me. And there were many opportunities, more than ever, when I went to graduate school. The MFA programs were alive and well, and people were developing writing programs around the country. There were jobs. I took one. And so I don't regret that. It was the right choice for me. But probably, and this is an ongoing discussion, right? Probably poetry, changed a bit. And we do talk about the workshop poem and the creative writing machine. And we have some people, very distinguished people connected to writing programs here who know a lot more about it than I do. But I can't fool, that was the right choice for me. That was the best career choice. But do you teach?
Try not. I teach
Yeah.
marginally, but
Yeah.
I don't want to ever take myself seriously and tell somebody else what to do with their poem.
Okay.
I don't want to do that.
Okay. One of my mentors, Lee Young Lee, he guest taught at Purdue when I was there, and he said, teaching's like giving blood. Direct quote. I swear to you.
I worked with him. He does not. Goldwyn Kennel used to say that he had to teach Liam Lee how to eat.
But he needed the money. We needed the money. He had a family. We went and met his kids in Chicago, and you got to have a job. Do what you can do, right? What would you do? You got to have a job.
I worked in a warehouse for years.
I know. I remember that. Yeah. But teaching was better. Anyone want to comment on that one? I'd be happy to entertain any comments on that one. So yeah, just honest, job's a job. Got to do it. Something. I don't know, right? Is that bad?
So thank you for the poems. I don't know about the rest of everyone, but I was stirred. I love the cadence, the way we feel, the images, and I just think it's so important that we have these moments and these opportunities to gather and come together as community. And so what I've been thinking about as we've had these discussions, I'm Sonny Fisher, Clackamas County Commissioner, and your perspective of what is the opportunity and challenge for government to nurture and promote what is happening tonight, because this is absolutely beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful to gather and connect and share. So just any thoughts, wisdom, advice?
Just a warm thanks for being here. I don't know many county commissioners that go to poetry readings, so I'm beholden to you. And here's your man. Tom would be the man to talk about that. This has got tradition, and they're good readings, and people come. So many fine writers have read here, and I just love it. And I come here early and walk around Milwaukie. and check out the town too. I mean, it's my way of seeing your community, and I love this community. And so I think, poetry, like anything, if it's cultivated, it could be painting, it could be a music program. You got to stay with it. You need a guy like this, right? It's like a labor of love. No, it's true. You got to stay right with it. But it grows. So thank you, and thank you very much for your support. And I hope we see more of this. So with that, I should probably close. I'd be happy to visit with you all. I really appreciate you coming. Thanks so much. I do. I have some books.
Books here. He'll be here to sign.
Sure thing.
Books.
Of course. Thank you.
There's still some refreshments. Please help yourself. That's what they're for.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, great to see you.
You too.
How you been? You all right?
Hey, how are you?
All right. You're teaching?
No, I am one. Yeah, me too.
I have no major problems. You have no major problems?
No. I don't understand any problems.
You're teaching also?
I'm tutoring? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And the WSU Vancouver.
Great.
And I'm also online.
You know a lot about this stuff. You got a lot to me here, too. You know, people trying to write and work.
Yeah, I do.
Thank you so much for coming. Really nice audience. You got a nice vibe. Oh, so I can't thank you enough. Thanks for staying slow like you in the audience. It means a lot. Just, you know what I'm saying? You know what it's like. Thanks, man. We'll see you soon. I'm always available for email. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't think you turned that on. That was naughty. Oh, what do you think? Yeah, what do you think? Did you really look at this? It's like, no, he's not going to do that. He's not going to put it in like, no, I'm of the old military like tradition. It's like, jumping in for what?
That's right.
And now there's a gaminess in it too. I'm sorry, but.
Oh, it's true, and I'm playing the game.
No, I'm not even.
No, I don't feel any insult from the game.
But you know, I think you look at the competition and you see some of the things that go on.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Oh, I know, AWP and all the prizes.
I've been to AWPs, and oh my God, the people that are good at it,
Yeah, the schmoozing.
or they make sure you get up with a paddle so you can breathe.
I know.
I mean,
What?
I don't really get it.
I admire your position.
Yeah, well, that doesn't feel like good, right? I mean, you just you have books floating there, and
But there are young writers too who tell me that they can't write because they got to work so hard, they got to work 3 jobs and everything. So.
And in the United States, the reality is everything's more fun to do.
Yes.
And that's why we do
You
it.
mentioned the cultural differences in some countries, of course.
You're a gentleman.
Yeah,
Gracious gentleman.
our kids to go to college.
Right.
We have.
Just review.
Yeah, you're right. Tell me your name again.
I'm Tony Thomas.
Tony Thomas.
Yeah.
Tony Thomas. Have we met before?
No, I just really liked your broadside. I haven't read your books before, but I thought, oh, tonight.
It's very nice to meet you.
Well, thank you.
If you want to grab a book, you can have it for free.
That's so nice of you. Which one should I have?
Take a bunch of animals and a bunch of the poems.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
And you know, the thing that's fun for me is, even though I have I don't ever
Okay.
my whole thing is like emotionality.
Okay.
It's harder to work on a
And
separate.
so I'm like, wow, he's making me see and I'm always like,
The object is just the embodiment of the emotion. And the emotion is abstract, so you got to put it into something.
well, I loved it.
Thanks very much.
Take an earwig.
No, I appreciate you coming.
Take an earwig or an eel and do what you did. Or I love the broadside because you're saying way more than just that Star Trek. Way
I
more.
saw this great
In a very nuanced way. You know, I have a little bit more of a and it's, you know, one of the it was fascinating. The last year I was
poems about parasites and viruses. So they each took like as this project. One would be the parasite, one would be the host.
our office
Scott and Milwaukie have a great tradition.
Oh, and the coaching center is amazing. It's fantastic. At the University of Edinburgh,